You've tuned into Unpause Your Life with Dr. Callie Estes. Your access to success strategies and more to help you move onward and upward with your life. Listen in each week as she interviews others who have really taken their essence to the next level and truly unpaused their life. Now here's your host, Dr. Callie Estes.
Hey everyone, welcome to the show. This is Dr. Callie Estes, and I am founder of the Addictions Academy, the Addictions Coach, and Rehab Rescue. Welcome to Unpause Your Life. This is a great podcast where we showcase people who have done something extraordinary with their life. I welcome you, and I hope you enjoy all of our guests.
On my way, found a reason to wake up another day.
Before we get started, let's hear this short message from one of my supporters.
All the things that you won't do.
Did you know 81% of Americans would like to become a published author? Chances are you might be one of them. What's stopping you? Writing and publishing a book takes a lot of work and is expensive, right? Well, not anymore. For your next book project, or even your first, team up with Hassle-Free Books. They make it so easy to become an author. They remove all of the fuss and struggle and make it smooth and simple. And it's far more affordable than you could ever imagine. Go to hasslefreebooks.com and use promo code UNPAUSE to receive a 10% discount off of any book project. Get started right away and become a published author in as little as 45 days. For your free 1-hour book formula guide, which will show you just how painless it can be to become an author, head to hasslefreebooks.com today.
All right. Thanks again for joining me. Let's get started with today's show.
Took a walk down the dark road where they said that I shouldn't go. I knew the dangers of life.
Welcome to Unpause Your Life with Dr. Callie Estes, the Addictions Coach of the Addictions Academy. My guest today, I'm very excited to have him, is Gary Kimble. You know Gary because he authored the live stage production of Pass It On, An Evening with Bill W. and Dr. Bob, and he produced 4 national tours presented by NCAD from coast to coast in over 80 cities in the United States and Canada. He's also an associate producer, director, and actor portraying Bill W. in that national tour of the off-Broadway play Bill W. and Dr. Bob. He's a very well-known author for Hazelden and has also been part of 9/11. Welcome, Gary.
Thank you so much, Callie. I'm honored to be on the program with you. Thank you.
You're welcome. You've got so much going on here. So tell us more about you. I know a lot of people know you from the play, per se, but what else have you done and what are you currently working on?
Currently, I actually moved from my home in New York City, where I lived for 35 years, to South Florida about 4 years ago. And I work as Director of Recovery Education Programs at Comprehensive Wellness Center in Lantana. And I travel around South Florida and I teach the early history of 12-step recovery and workshops on the steps and take a lot of people through the steps. Old school, original gangster method used by Dr. Bob and Bill W., which is to do the steps quickly and often. And that occupies a lot of my time. And I'm also executive producer of the 2018 Substance Use Disorder Talks, which is being held at Florida Atlantic University on April 7th. And it's presented by the Delray Beach Drug Task Force in partnership with the FAU Phyllis and Harvey Sandler School of Social Work. It's a cutting edge. It's really a national call to action. The title of the event is called Beacons of Hope, the 2018 SUD Talks, 360 Degrees of Empowerment. It's a national call to action, bringing together visionary thought leaders from around the nation to present cutting-edge ideas to try and stop this epidemic of addiction that's plaguing our nation.
That sounds interesting.
It's an awesome event. We have Pat O'Brien, formerly from CBS Sports and Access Hollywood, as our master of ceremonies. General Barry Price, who's a 5-star U.S. general who is coming to us from the Community Anti-Drug Coalition of America. We have William Cope Moyers from Hazelden. We have Heather Hayes, the renowned interventionist from Dr. Drew's intervention program. Rapper Royce the 5'9" is going to share a recovery story, and Brandon Novak, former cast member from Jackass, is going to share his recovery story. And we have an amazing group of speakers: Justin Luke Riley, the founder of YPR, and Jeffrey Mangrum, who is a recovery theatrical artist who's doing a really fascinating piece. Forrest Darrell Strawberry is going to be on the bill. Leonard Lee Bushell, who's the publisher of the Addiction and Recovery e-Bulletin and the producer of the Real Recovery Film Festival. We have Carol McDade, who is a renowned recovery lobbyist in Washington, D.C. John Hewlett, former drug czar from the state of New Jersey, who worked for Governor Christie, and John McAndrew, who's a recovery musician, who has played his recovery music all around the world. And Justin Chapman, who is one of the assistant attorneys, state attorneys here in Florida. And each one is going to present a topic. They're going to speak on a specific topic, 12 different disciplines that are they're coming together to stand together as one voice to try and work together and give us marching orders what we can do to make a difference in stopping this plague.
Oh, wow. Where's this going to be?
It's at Barry Kay Auditorium at Florida Atlantic University on April 7th. It's from 2 to 6 p.m. That's on a Saturday. Tickets are $25 for the orchestra, $15 for mezzanine, and $10 with any student ID. We also have a number of Dr. Wendy Guastafaro and Dr. Heather Howard, and Andrew Berkey is going to speak, and Dr. Janet Robichaud and Clay Weaver, and it's just an amazing panel that we have put together for this symposium. And I know it'll be a fascinating event. I hope everybody comes out to support it.
Wonderful.
So I'm working hard on that. And Pass It On is by the time this airs, it will close. We will have played the Crest Theater in Delray Beach, Florida. And we still are traveling around the country. And so that's what I'm doing.
That always looks like so much fun. I've seen you put that on. That just looks like you have such a blast doing that.
Oh, thank you. It's an amazing experience. We've done it in over 80 cities in North America. And always we bear witness to healing miracles. We have hundreds of emails and letters from people who have brought an alcoholic or a drug addict to the show, and they, instead of reading about or hearing about it, they experientially get to see someone sober up in front of their eyes, and they learn about what 12-step is and the history of this thing, which is absolutely astonishing. And it engages them. And these letters come from people who the next day go to their first meeting. Often they write to us a year later. We've been doing when they get their first year of sobriety. And it's just an amazing experience. And it's always used as a fundraising tool for recovery organizations around the country. They engage us and bring us to town and use it as a fundraising tool. And it's just been such a privilege to do that. It's presented by the National Council on Alcoholism and Drug Dependence everywhere we go. And it's just been an honor to do it. It's just a blast.
Very nice. Now, how did you come up with that? Because that's such a unique thing. What made you come up with that?
Wow. That's a really great question. I had to come involved with, there's a play called Bill W. and Dr. Bob by Stephen Bergman and Janet Surrey, who are dear friends. And that play ran off Broadway, and I became involved with that production, and then associate produced the national tour of the off-Broadway play. We took it to the 75th International AA Convention in San Antonio in 2010, and thousands of people came to see us, and I played Bill in that, and I directed it and produced the tour, and it was such a profound experience that we were inundated with requests to bring that tour to cities all over the United States, but it had 10 actors. It was expensive to travel with as a tour. And in my 11-step meditation, I received guidance to write another play, which focused more on not just how Bill and Bob met, but what it is that they created. And it just sort of came to me. I was on a long drive coast to coast in a snowstorm, driving from Phoenix to New York City, and the idea came into my head and conceived it and could sort of see it in front of my vision as I was driving. how it would unfold. And it's staged as if you're at an AA meeting in 1949, the year before Dr. Bob died. And Bill W. and Dr. Bob are running the meeting. And then through theatrical device, you're transported into the past. And you see them stumbling around drunk as monkeys. You watch them get sober before your very eyes. You're a fly on the wall the night they met at the Gatehouse in 1935. And then the second act, they regale the audience with stories, with our history, with our astonishing history, which is the greatest, America's greatest gift to the world, one of the greatest stories in American history, which is largely unknown, even to people in recovery. A lot of people know Bill and Bob's story, but they don't know the genesis and the history of how the steps were created, how the Big Book got published, how they got the meeting started. It took them years and incredible hardships that they faced. Many other famous characters in American history were involved in that process. The people like Dr. Carl Jung and John D. Rockefeller, so many characters that come to play in that story. And so the second act is actually quite funny, and we tell these astonishing yarns about the history. And, if you're in 12 step, you don't really know the history of it. You really don't fully grasp what a miracle it is. And so anyway, that's sort of how it came about. And at that event in San Antonio, when we did the off-Broadway play, Hazelden Publishing became a sponsor of the tour. And that, for me, developed a relationship with Hazelden. And by and by, over the years, they asked me to write a book. One of their wonderful senior editors, Sid Farrar, was retiring, and on his bucket list was a book about Step 12 and how to do service in the 21st century and overcome obstacles that block our path oftentimes when we're trying to do 12-step calls. Service was on the decline, the membership was on the decline, and they wanted to write a book that would light a grass fire under people, and they asked me to write that book. I was floored when they asked me, and that came out last year. It's called Walk the Talk with Step 12, Staying Sober Through Service, for Hazelden Publishing. And I share my own story in that. That's the beginning of a 12-step call, is telling your story. And then present the early history of how the founders worked Step 12 in the golden age of the 12-steppers. And then there are dozens of stories throughout the book that are testimonies from recovery warriors who have been in the game for a long time doing 12-step work, and how to actually present a 12-step call, how to sponsor, how to take somebody through the steps quickly. And that was a really rewarding experience writing that. You can get it on Amazon and also at Hazelden Publishing and Barnes & Noble and Google Books. And you can Google it on the internet, and I hope people will pick up a copy and give it to their sponsors, give it to their sponsees. It was really my goal in writing that book, was to help educate newcomers about the importance of Step 12, the critical importance of sponsoring people and doing service. So
we'll put all the links up when this podcast airs,
awesome,
so that people can
that's
find it.
Thank you.
Yeah, and they can find you too. We'll put up the Sud Talks so that they can find the location and reach out to you or be able to purchase tickets for that. And then I know your play will have already aired. Do you have another location you'll be going to after this area?
We're just now building our tour for the rest of 2018, so I don't have an itinerary that's firm yet, unfortunately, which I could give that to you.
Okay.
If you're in South Florida, if they're listening and they're in South Florida, I do a lot of workshops on the steps and special presentations for groups in treatment and alumni groups and educators and lawmakers and so forth, teaching the history of where the steps came from and the spiritual principles behind the steps and why it works, the science behind the spirituality, and love to bring that message anywhere.
Awesome. Now, I always ask this question when there's people in the industry. Did you start in this industry, or was your career different per se? Did you have a previous career?
I did. I'm originally from just south of Akron, Ohio, and I moved to New York City when I was 17 to become an actor. And I studied at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. Pardon me. And by the time I was in my mid-30s, I had supporting and lead roles in 39 Broadway musicals, mostly tours and international tours, and understudied a lot of people. I was a professional actor and did a lot of voiceovers and television and film, mostly Broadway musicals. I traveled the globe. I performed, according to my mother, she kept track of my travels. I performed on stages in about 800 cities in over 60 countries.
Wow.
And drugs and alcohol took me out of the game and flatlined my career. My last big Broadway musical, I was playing Daddy Warbucks in the Broadway musical Annie on a tour. And it's kind of gross to say, but I vomited on Little Orphan Annie on stage, and they fired me, and that was the end. That was the end of that career. And needless to say, and I became unemployable. And eventually I hit my bottom. I went to maybe 47 detoxes and many, many treatment experiences, and I always got hammered the minute I walked out the door. I always went to a treatment facility in New Jersey, and there were two elderly AA guys who were in their 70s that brought meetings in every time I was at that facility. And they had both been sponsored by Bill W., and one of their fathers was one of the first 87 members of AA. And they ended up becoming my sponsors, and they shadowed me when I got out of treatment the last time, and they babysat me. They wouldn't let me go anywhere on my own. They told me whatever happened when the sun went down was none of my business, and that I was not allowed outside without adult supervision. I was 35, and they were amazing. They took me through the steps quickly, and they took me through them often, and instilled in me a love of the history and the importance of service. And they were both historians, AA historians, and 12-step historians, I should say. And it really instilled in me a passion for that. And I began to study in the archives and became fascinated by the history. And in early recovery, one of my sponsors was a retired Episcopal priest. They both just passed away within the last 6 months, and they were both in their 90s. One of them had 70 years of continuous sobriety, and the other one had 68 years.
Wow.
And they were co-sponsored me for 20 years. And one of them was a retired Episcopal priest, and I wanted to be like him when I grew up. So I started taking classes in a seminary in New York and had ambitions to become a priest. And I started working for a day job on Wall Street for a brokerage firm and ended up becoming a stockbroker. And that led me to, I had an office, worked on the 28th floor of the South Tower of the World Trade Center. And I became very ill shortly with an autoimmune disorder about a week before 9/11. Started breaking out with the shingles. They told me my immune system was gone. And I ended up going down to the World Trade Center on 9/11 to listen to a fifth step. I was going down to quit my job because I was diagnosed terminal. And a sponsee of mine was time to do his fifth step. And I said I'd meet him down there and listen to the fifth step. And then my plan was to go up and quit my job later that day. And then, of course, we were in the South Tower when the first plane hit. And all hell broke loose. And we ended up working in a triage in a hazmat suit. I was ordained on that day in the middle of the street by another elderly priest. And ended up in a priest in a hazmat suit, working in a triage that the military had set up. And they evacuated maybe 500,000 people on anything that would float. They would float them across the Hudson River, and they would bring them through this triage. And I hugged probably 30 or 40,000 people over a period of 3 days with no immune system, covered with shingles, and very, very ill. And as I hugged those people, I kept getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And by the end of the third day, they allowed first responders and clergy to go back to their homes in Manhattan. And I ended up back at my sponsor's house in the middle of the night. And when I took the hazmat suit off, my body was covered with pus and blood, all caked on, and sweat from all the shingles popping open as these people would hug me, as I would hug people and pray with them and listen to their stories like we do in 12-step. That's where the healing starts, listening to our stories. And the shingles were gone. There were scabs and pink dots on my body. As I bathed myself, they were healed in 10 days with no medication, no pain reliever, no medication, because I'm allergic to the treatment for shingles. And my immune system was restored as a direct result of doing service. And it was an astonishing, life-changing experience. And I did quit my job. I left New York, and I went to a monastery in Bardstown, Kentucky called the Abbey of Gethsemane. I had known about it. My sponsor took me there on an 11-step retreat a couple of times. And I ended up staying for a couple of years and scrubbing floors. We had to take a vow of silence, which I did not do very well. And they eventually asked me to leave. and and the Father Abbot said, "You're not the silent type. You're a ram's horn, and you need to go up on the mountain and shout the good news." And by doing, I really, in the monastery, in that silence, learned in a very deep and visceral way how to discern the difference between the voice of my disease and the voice of my God consciousness, which is old school 11th step, which was a technique called two-way prayers. And I practiced that religiously for 2 years in silence. And in that guidance that I received in my 11th step, I was guided to start a production company we called it One Show at a Time, take the off-Broadway play to the 75th International, write, pass it on. I'm also director of project development for a documentary that's being filmed for PBS and the BBC for worldwide distribution. It's called One Day at a Time, The History, Hope, and Healing of 12-Step Recovery. It's being filmed by Northern Light Productions from Boston. And it tells the story of hope and the history of 12-Step. And it will be viewed by about 650 million people worldwide when we finish the film, which is projected next year, possibly 2 years. It may take that long to finish. We've been working on it for several years. And it'll be distributed then, after its initial worldwide television broadcast, it will be distributed to all the public schools and prisons and educational institutions in the United States and Canada, accompanied by educational materials, which will be created by Hazelden Publishing. And I started teaching, working in treatment centers as a group facilitator, teaching the history of 12-step and lecturing, and sort of by and by became a circuit speaker as a result of traveling around the country playing Bill Wilson, and now writing books for Hazelden, such as Walk the Talk with Step 12. And it's been quite a journey.
Wow, what a fascinating life. Thank you for sharing that with us. Yeah.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you for listening.
It's so interesting.
And allowing me to talk with you.
Yeah, you wouldn't get where you were or where you are without all the trials and tribulations that you had gone through. You know?
Absolutely, 100%. I realize now, as a result of recovery, what used to be my liabilities are my assets. And that all the dark places that I've been in my life, because I was a savage drug addict and a terrible alcoholic. And started when I was a kid. I started drinking when I was 12. By the time I graduated high school, I had killed 2 people in an automobile accident and put 4 more people in the hospital, and totaled 11 automobiles. And then went off to New York, and I became a stripper, and I lost a moral a day, and while I was studying acting, and just became a savage drug addict. And then on tour, it was like I was captain of my own pirate ship, creating mayhem and chaos around the globe. And it got very ugly. And all of those dark places, because I'm in recovery, are my touchstones for growth that enable me to be of service to other people who suffer. And so none of that now is a liability. It's all in it, become an asset, and help me to become a teacher and work with people that suffer. And nothing gives my heart a sweeter song than helping people. It's just a beautiful thing.
That's awesome. So how can our listeners reach you? How can they find you? Give us your Twitter handles, your social media, fun stuff.
Oh, gosh. Let's see. They can find me on Facebook, Gary Kimble on Facebook. They can find me through Comprehensive Wellness Center at cwcrecovery.com. On that website, sudtalks.com, www.sudtalks.com. They can find me in that way. Or Gary Kimble, Kimble on Facebook.
Awesome.
Just shoot me a note, and love to talk to them. Or they could email me for information about Pass It On at mail, MAIL, numeral 2, miracle.com. pass it on at mail2miracle.com.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your story with us, and I look forward to getting the message out there.
Callie, thank you. God bless you for what you do.
Thank you, and you've been listening to UnpauseYourLife.com. Hey everyone, thanks again for listening. I really hope you enjoyed the show today. Head on over to iTunes and Apple Podcasts and leave a comment or review of what you think. Or contact us at 1-800-706-0318. If you want to be on our show, feel free to email or call. And if you have a topic, feel free to email or call as well.
Thanks for listening to Unpause Your Life. For show notes and more, head on over to unpauseyourlife.com.
Big shout out to recoveryinnovators.com for help producing this show. Thank you guys.
I took a walk down the long road where they said that I shouldn't go. On my way found a reason to wake up another day. But they needed to show you all the things that you won't do. Find faith or religion, but nothing to show for it. No need to escape in love with my pain. I may be awake, but I'm alive, still alive, and I won't be bound by your mistake. No, I won't be your enemy, trapped at the gate. Bring me to life, put me to death. Just give me something that's just not so hard to believe. To believe. To believe. I took a walk down the dark road where they said that I shouldn't go. I knew the dangers of flying. Now I'm so far from solid ground. But they needed to show you all the things that you won't do.